Question, what determines our views? Is it age or the generation to which we belong?
Well, it's both. People do tend to become more conservative as they get older, but there is also a generational influence. There's some interesting research to suggest that a generation tends to lean in the direction of a whatever popular president there was when they were adolescents or young adults. So for millennials, that's going to be Obama. So millennials tend to lean a little Democratic. But there's another generation that was almost completely left out in that discussion that you mentioned, and that's Gen X. So Gen X tends to lean Republican because they came of age in the Reagan era.
I was asking Doug Sosnick not so much who wins in the long term as between R's and D's or maybe I's, but rather when the climate of incivility is over. And to that, he said, when the boomers die off. Respond to that.
Well, again, he's pretty much completely forgotten about Gen X. And Gen X is unfortunately just as polarized as all of the other generations. So when you consider some of the politicians in this category, say, as just one example, Ron DeSantis, another Ted Cruz, plenty of polarization to go around with Gen X.
Okay, this is a pretty morbid conversation. So now, and I'm not rooting for an ideology here. I just want people to compromise, right? Is it when X and boomers are no longer gone, and now it's Z and millennials, I hope I'm keeping all this straight, they're finally in control. Now we have a return to civility and compromise.
Oh, I wish. But we know, I mean, let's take the youngest group we have good data on. So one of the big national surveys of high school seniors. So that's going to be 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, right as they start voting. So high school seniors have increasingly said that they are very conservative or very liberal. So there's more at the extremes of political belief as time has gone on. So the latest data that we've got from 2021, those numbers were at all-time highs. So Gen Z is also polarized, just like the rest of the electorate.
I mean, the concern that I have as a father of four is that our four have grown up and they're older now, 20s and 30s. This climate is all they know. I mean, we can tell them and they can read and they can learn about a period in the 80s when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill could have a cocktail with one another, but all they've experienced is the climate in which we're living. So that's what holds me back from the optimism of thinking they're better than we are and things will get better for society.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. This is the only world that they've ever known. And, as I've learned in, decades researching generational differences, generations don't just wake up one day and go, hey, I'm going to be this way or that way.
Right.
Those changes reflect the changes in the rest of the culture. Generations happen because cultures change. And one of the ways that our culture and our country has changed is in that direction of greater polarization. So not only that there's more people at the extremes that more disagree, but in surveys, Democrats are now more likely to say that they feel cold and even hate toward Republicans, and Republicans are more likely to say the same about Democrats. So there's big levels of not just polarization, but that kind of underlying emotion around politics in the last, especially 5 to 10 years.
Quick final thought. I think you made reference to this earlier on when you said that some tend to get more conservative as they age. It's great to be young and idealistic, but when you start earning money, you want to hold on to as much of it as you can. I think that's one of the driving factors in at least making more folks fiscally conservative. Final thought is yours.
Well, my final thought is this, that one thing that might help on some issues is that young adult Republicans are fairly progressive, much more progressive than older adult Republicans on a lot of issues, on a lot of social issues. Same-sex marriage comes to mind. They're also more progressive on abortion, on legalizing marijuana, on maternity leave, on transgender people being able to serve in the military. So there may be less polarization around some of those issues as time goes on, because among younger people, Democrats and Republicans are not as far apart.
Yeah, and I would add guns to that list.